This video is going to discuss the way you can change Excel's user interface. So instead of showing column letters across the top, it uses numbers across the top. So it refers to rows by number and columns by number. Also, I'm going to demonstrate a little bit of how the formulas look when you use the row column notation. Now, this is the way Excel actually works. This is the way Excel actually stores all of its information. The letters are simply a convenience for human beings, and it's a carryover from Lotus 123. So to change it to the the column numbers, what we do is we go to the Office menu, or if you're in Excel 2010, you go to the File menu, and we're going to go to the Options for Excel. So click File, or as you might click the Office menu and then click the Options button. Now under the options, you'll notice that there's an option here for formulas. So if we click the formulas group here, one of the options under formulas is the row 1, column 1 reference style. So we go ahead and put a check mark in that box and then click OK. Now you notice immediately you've got 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on for your columns. And you'll notice when I'm in cell A1 here, which is actually row 1, column 1, that's reflected up here in the little address box. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some formulas in that will essentially sum up these values here. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a sum in there. So I'll click on my home ribbon and hit the auto sum button, and it sums up my numbers. Now what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you what these formulas look like. So if I click in that cell, you'll notice you get a very different look here to these formulas. This formula is the same as any formula you would have seen before with sum, but instead of saying a range of cells B4 through B5, you see a range that says row minus 2. So that's the row minus 2 right there, and so that's referring to the cell here in 4-2. And then the C, notice, has no square brackets next to it. That simply just means same column. So then we have the range operation here, and then it says through row minus 1 same column. So this is the notation that Excel actually uses when it stores their formulas. Even when you're using ABC, Excel actually still uses this to store its formulas. So if we notice in the various cells here, we have exactly the same formula in every cell, because this is a relative reference, and the relative reference basically says add up everything 2 rows above me in the same column through 1 row above me in the same column. Again, exactly the same formula you see. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to put a formula in this cell that'll take this number and multiply it times x, x being the 10 down here. And I want to take every one of these numbers and multiply it times that same value. So in this case, we need an absolute reference to this value in this cell. So I'm going to go ahead and just type the formula, so equals, and I'll click the cell above me. Well, that's row minus 1, same column, and then multiply times this cell right here, which notice now is row 3 in a positive direction, 3 rows down, column 1 over in a positive direction. So you'll see the square brackets there on the column notation. Now I want that to be an absolute reference, though, so that I can fill this across nicely and conveniently. So the keystroke in Excel to get an absolute reference is to hit F4. So you'll notice when I hit F4, it changed that from a relative reference to an absolute reference that just says row 10, column 3. So that'll be the absolute reference. So I'll hit enter on this cell, and so I get the 70 as you would expect, and I'm going to fill this across, and it does exactly what you would think it would. Let's take a look at this formula. This formula says a relative reference of minus 1 row, same column, times R10C3. So the R10C3 is exactly the same. That's that absolute reference. So this is exactly the way Excel does everything. And in fact, when we're working in VBA, this is the way we might want to enter formulas in VBA. If we do indeed want to put formulas in the cell from VBA, we're going to use the row column notation. It's a lot easier, of course, to look at your sheet and figure out what column you want to refer to here now that it has a number on it. We don't have to think in our mind that column D is actually column 4. It's a lot easier when you get out there to column 16 just to say column 16 and not try to figure out how to convert the letter to a number. So, you know, you can change back and forth between this notation and the other very easily just by clearing or setting that checkbox in the options. So this is the row column notation, and I would suggest you get used to this and you start thinking about Excel formulas. Some people actually find Excel formulas using this notation to be much easier to understand, rather than trying to think about how does that relative stuff and absolute stuff work when you copy or fill. Thank you very much.